Welcome to episode 463, where timing is everything. The secret to more powerful herbal remedies. Today's guest is one of my favorites, and we had so much fun talking. There was so much information dropped in this episode. But we have Bevon Cohen back on, who is an award-winning author and the owner of Small House Farm and host of the popular Seeds and Weeds podcast. Bevon offers workshops and lectures across the country on the benefits of living closer to the land through seeds, herbs, and locally grown food. He is a food and garden writer whose work has appeared in many national publications, and he's the author of more than 10 books, including The Artisan Herbalist and his latest, Herbs in Every Season. And this one I was really excited to talk about because the seasonality of herbs, both how they meet our needs medicinally, nutritionally, and culinary, that changes throughout the seasons. Like, it's just this incredible ecosystem that is there for us if we just know how to harvest it. So this was a super fun interview. You are going to get so much out of it. I can't wait for you to listen. Even as an experienced herbalist, I learned a couple of new things and one new plant that I did not know had medicinal qualities. You have to let me know in the comments if you're watching this on our YouTube channel or whatever app you're listening to, if you can do it in the review. I am super curious to know if you knew, and you'll hear my surprise, if you knew that that herb had all of those medicinal properties. I should say flower. More people are familiar with it as a flower. I don't want to give it away, but I was very surprised, and I'd love to know if you knew about that as well. So without further ado, here is my interview with Bevon. Well, Bevon, welcome back to the Pioneering Today podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here.
Same. I always enjoy anytime I get to learn from you or we get to chit chat and talk. And one of my favorite things to talk about is herbs. And I really love the premise of what we're going to share about today. That's also the premise of your new book. And that is Herbs in Every Season. And I especially love, as a homesteader and a gardener, the seasonality aspect of this. So, why is it important to understand the seasonal aspect of herbs?
I think there's a few different important reasons. I mean, the first is, herbs are going to change throughout the season as they grow, right? The parts of the plants that we're going to work with is going to how we harvest is dependent on the season, right? We change throughout the seasons, right? So our needs for plants are going to change. And what we'll discover as we kind of dig into this idea is that as we change through the seasons, the herbs change with us. So we always have what we need when we need it because nature's just super cool like that, right? Even as we travel through the seasons of our lives, we'll find that to be the case, right? But I also think it's important when we look at plants through this seasonal nature, when we observe a plant from seed all the way through until seed again, that actually makes us better gardeners too, right? Because we have this opportunity to really understand every nuance of that plant, what it likes, where it likes it, when it likes it. So that makes us better growers. It makes us better medicine makers. And I think ultimately, in the end, maybe it even can make us better people.
Ooh, I like that. And I'm with you as a gardener and then as an herbalist. And my hope is that every gardener becomes an herbalist or every herbalist becomes a gardener, right? But everybody's starting at one point. There is very something very special when you are able to work from a medicinal standpoint with herbs that are growing and you can watch that whole cycle and interact with them versus just purchasing them somewhere or getting them in already prepared format or perhaps dried. There is something very special about getting to spend that whole season with an herb. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, what we find is in all of our teachings, in the book in particular, but basically anytime I talk about plants, I'm going to talk about the relationship that we have with plants, right? And we accomplish that by being with the plant, by growing with it, whether it's in our garden or it's in the wild. I'd say probably half the plants that I talk about in the book are actually wild plants. So you don't even really need to be a gardener to make use of all of these wonderful plants, most certainly. But we're going to be able to develop that relationship and see how we interact with those herbs in a much different way than if we just purchase them online or from a supplier, wherever it may be, for sure.
Yeah. So for the new book, how did you select the 48 herbs that you have featured in there? Because there's one of the beautiful things about herbs, there's so many herbs. So sometimes it's almost like, oh, like how do I decide to focus on them?
Yeah, this was a challenge for sure because, like you said, I mean, there's hundreds of plants that we could have chosen for the book. So there was a few criteria that we used here. One is I wanted to obviously write about plants that I'm familiar with, plants that I know well enough to write about. You know, that was obviously
Amen.
right. That's an important place to start, for sure. I also wanted to choose plants that I felt represented the seasons properly. That it was obvious enough to the reader, even if they're very new to this concept, that they'd be able to see the points that I was making with these plants and how seasonally these plants change. Good representations of the season, I thought was important. But also, you know, I write a lot about plants. This is actually my 10th book, and I write a lot of articles. I'm constantly writing about plants. That's a big part of what we do here. So I wanted to write about some new plants. You know, in 2021, I had a book come out called The Artisan Herbalist. There's 30 something plants in that. I didn't want to just delve into those same plants again. A couple of them we do touch on, we dig a little bit deeper into them, but for the most part, they're all new. They're all different plants, ones that were new to my writing. So folks that may follow along with me and want to learn more from me, we're talking about new things here, you know, that we haven't dug into as deeply before.
Awesome. Tell me a bit about your personal journey with herbs. Like, where did your learning come from? Was it just self-taught? Like, kind of share with me that part.
So yeah, I'm mostly self-taught. I've done some herb courses. I've studied under other herbalists, a number over the years. But I've been learning about plants my whole life. You know, my fascination with plants began when I was a young boy, living with my grandmother. You know, we lived by a big stretch of forest, and I'd spend a lot of time out in the woods. You know, doing things kids do. You know, climbing trees, whatever, picking berries. And one of the berries that we would pick would be wintergreen. And I was just so fascinated with this little plant. I just loved it so much. It was so cute and tasty little snacks and that sort of thing. And my grandma always took me to the library. That was the thing growing up, always. Every week we'd go to the library and get more books. So I've always been an avid reader. So I started getting books at the library about the plants that I was finding in the woods. So it started at a young age where this just fascination with, you know, the plant world began, and I have not stopped reading books since. I still, just like as a boy, I spend most of my time in the woods and reading books. So yeah, most of my knowledge is self-taught, most certainly. But I've appreciated being able to spend the time in the shadow of herbalists older and wiser than I am, because I think that's a really important part of the learning process as well.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And in fact, at the time of this recording, which we'll be releasing very close to when we're actually recording it, it's just at the tail end of March. I mean, so we're almost to spring. In fact, I think we're like one calendar day off as we're recording this. And so I know for me, one of the very first things, and they just started popping, so I have plans to go and harvest this weekend, is stinging nettles. So in the spring, that's one of our first ones. I always look forward to it. Um, so I love to talk about examples of, I know I kind of just gave springs depending on where you live there, but example of an herb that's particularly useful or abundant for each of the seasons. So we'll just start with spring because that's where we're at, and then go through.
I mean, nettles is a great plant to start with. You know, we're gonna find, and in the book, like I said, I really tried to make a balance between wild plants and cultivated plants. So if
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about a wild plant that comes out in the spring, nettles would certainly be an awesome choice. You know, it's also one that we love very much here, and you know, I think most people that are familiar with nettles, beyond just how it got its name, stinging nettles,
Right.
you know, if you're there with your experience, you may not be a big fan, but I encourage you to dig deeper into this plant because there's so much awesome stuff here. It is, number one, incredibly nutritious, right? It's delicious. It is one of the most nutritious wild plants that we can get our hands on, loaded with minerals, loaded iron, B vitamins, magnesium. I mean, all the stuff you want. This plant's got it in full. You know what I mean? And once you heat the plant, like through cooking or whatever, or just simply dry the plant, it dissipates the formic acid and the histamines that cause that stinging effect. So then it's perfectly safe to touch and eat and consume. It won't irritate you in any way. So put it in your soups, put it in your eggs. I mean, put this thing, I just saute it up with some garlic. Oh my gosh, what a spring treat, right? For sure. But it's also incredibly medicinal. I mean, outside of just its nutritional value,
Yeah.
It's anti-inflammatory. So traditionally, we're going to use it topically. I like to infuse it in oil, make it into a salve or a lotion. It's great for inflammation and joint pain and arthritis, all that sort of thing. Historically, people would, I mean, flog themselves with nettles plants. So literally just beat themselves with the plants.
Yeah, especially on the joint, right? Like if you had a really inflamed like joint or injury site.
Absolutely, exactly
Yeah.
right. You know what I mean? And it, it opens up the capillaries, it stimulates blood flow. It's actually a very effective way to use it, although some people kind of shy away from it, and that's okay. Infusing it in oil, of the stuff that we're looking for is all fat soluble, so we can make it into a really nice topical product that way. I love to make a nice nettles lotion, really good stuff. And for your listeners that are very industrious, the stem of the plant makes excellent cordage. It's very fibrous and it's historically made into cords of ropes and things.
Yeah.
So if you've got that kind of time or interest, this plant, literally every part of it is going to do something awesome for you for sure.
Sweet. Okay. So do you want to do you want to go to a cultivated for spring, or do we want to just move to summer?
Let's do a cultivated plant.
Okay.
How about calendula? That's a good one.
Yeah.
We grow a lot of calendula. We grow a lot of calendula here, for the flowers as well as for the seeds. We have a little seed company. We sell a lot of herb and flower seeds and fruits and vegetables too. But so we have to grow a lot of calendula. I have never grown enough calendula seed to keep it in stock through seed season.
Nice.
Well, yeah, it's
It's a
great.
good problem, right?
It's a good problem. It's a good problem. And I mean, we grow a lot of it. I'm talking like gallon buckets of it. So we sell a lot of it. It's very popular. Very nice. It's an awesome herb because it loves the cool weather of spring. You know what I mean? So we can get it going in the garden very, very quickly. I like to start it indoors. I'll start the seeds indoors. And when I take those little baby plants out to the garden, I will then direct sow some as well. So we've just got all sorts of it in all sorts of stages of its life cycle. That's really nice for us. So most people are probably familiar with calendula. A lot of your listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with the benefits of calendula. It's an emollient herb, so it softens and soothes. So it's really nice for itchy, red, rashy skin conditions. Really, really soft. I like to put it in lemon balm, or excuse me, into lip balm. I like to put it in a lip balm. I'm thinking about lemon balm right now because for a whole other thing I was doing with my life. I like to put it into lip balm. We infuse it in pumpkin seed oil and make it into a lip balm. It's really, really nice. Perfect for, really chapped lips that we're going to get here in Michigan for sure. So that's a really nice one. But the plant's also edible, right? Now the leaves are bitter. I'd have to say you've got to be pretty hungry to want to eat those leaves, but you absolutely could. You cook them up, you could eat them. But it's the petals that we're after here. They are delicious and they're soft and soothing. Now, when you harvest calendula flowers, your fingers are going to get really sticky. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that texture kind of translates over into the food too. So when we were working on recipes for the book, I tried to include some recipes that were like basic things that every single person could try, even if they've never cooked anything in their life with plants. But then I tried to do some things. Let's kind of push the boundaries and try some new things. And I said, well, let's really lean into this emollient nature, this almost creaminess of the calendula. And we did a calendula butter sauce.
Ooh.
Oh man, over some asparagus, right? Because it's springtime. Over some of that spring asparagus,
Yeah.
fantastic. And just like if you've ever used like saffron or safflower to like color rice or that sort of thing,
Mhm.
it puts this nice orange color into the sauce. So it's really beautiful. You can use some flowers to garnish it. It's really, really nice. It's a pretty dish, but
Oh,
so
yeah.
delicious. So I really try to find ways to kind of um, to expand everybody's horizons, let's say, on the way that we might be able to work with some of these plants. So I honestly can't believe all the recipes made it into the book. There are so many recipes in this book. I just kept going and going. I was having so much fun with it. And Timber was like, they're all so good. We're putting them all in. So you've seen it. There's a lot of recipes in there.
That's exciting. Yeah. Well, calendula has been used too as a dye, like a food dye, a natural food dye, to your point.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. No, calendula is one of my favorites. Curious though, have you done much studying just in your own practices on all the different varieties of calendula as far as their medicinal properties? Like the orange, I know is typically what we have the most clinical studies anyways that you when you can get clinical studies on herbs, I should say, right? So I'm just kind of curious because I love all the calendula. So I have like a strawberry and I have a snow and a lemon drop. And so I'm always, I usually stick to the orange for my medicinal gathering, but I was just curious if you personally have done any playing around in that.
This is a cool question. So, and with many of our herbs, of course, we're going to want to stick to the straight species when we're making
Right.
something medicinal out of it, and trying to avoid these cultivars and that sort of thing. But calendula, I found, and we grow a lot of different ones here as well, that from one to the next, I find them to be, in my personal experience, very similar in the products that we make and how effective they are. We've actually allowed a lot of our calendula to kind of mix and cross up a little bit. So there's all sorts of wonderful things happening out there, and they all seem to make really nice medicine. They're all still delicious food, but then you just get all these different colors and all this diversity, and we really appreciate that as well. So double blooms, I mean, all sorts of different stuff are happening out there, and I'm loving it. So if anybody ever bought calendula seeds from us, they would get a wonder of different things. You know what I mean? It's not that straight orange stuff anymore, for sure.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. In fact, some of mine have also done the same thing. Like they've interbreeded, and then I've got like these different, and I'm like, ooh, like I just kind
So
of let them go
cool.
hog wild. I just let them self seed themselves. I'm like, let's see what you come up with next year.
Yeah, that's beautiful. They do some amazing stuff. Some of the
Yeah.
patterns and colors, I mean, I love calendula so much. We've been doing a lot of promotional stuff for the book. I've been doing a lot of podcasts, radio, TV, all these interviews all the time. And people keep asking me, "What's your favorite herb? What's your favorite herb?" And calendula, I always, any day of the week, you ask, like, how do you pick a favorite, right? But calendula would be right up there for sure. I love it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, now we're gonna have to move to summer. So what's our next pick for summer?
So I'm actually, because I even said it once, we're gonna say lemon balm is gonna be my summer herb. I'm a huge lemon balm guy. We grow a lot of lemon balm here, and so there's a lot to be said about lemon balm, right? So first off, let's talk about it in the kitchen. It's delicious, lemony flavor, right? Most certainly, I enjoy it. You could use it as simply like make a lemonade. We kind of do like a sun tea type of thing with the lemon balm, and it makes a really nice, refreshing drink that we can enjoy. That's really nice. In the book, to push the boundary, we did a lemon balm shiitake mushroom stuffing.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. Oh man, it's so good. You get the earthiness of the mushroom, but then kind of that citrus zip from the lemon balm. Very flavorful. That was really nice stuff. But if we move into the kitchen, right? I mean, lemon balm is well known as an antiviral herb, right? And well, viruses seem to be an issue, right? So it's more and more. It seems like lemon balm is what we need. It could be as simple as a tea, but also as a tincture. We do a lot of lemon balm tincture, alcohol extract here. I think that that's really, really effective. Lemon balm's also good for stress, anxiety, nervous tension. It can work as a sleep aid, that sort of thing. I think that lemon balm is a plant that brings joy. I've never seen anybody smell lemon balm and not like immediately smile. It's such a happy plant. And in today's world, I feel that everybody could use a little bit more joy. I think that that would be important. So I always recommend lemon balm to everybody whenever possible.
Yeah, I really do enjoy lemon balm as well. And it's one of those that is really easy to grow. Sometimes maybe if you have limited space, you may want to try to give it some boundaries.
Yes, it's in the mint family,
Yeah.
so it get comfortable in its space. I mean, it's not sprawling and taking over quite like a mint would, but it does get very comfortable in its space. So if you either let it have its own space to do its thing or try to create some boundary for it, for sure. We've been growing lemon balm. I mean, we've been here for 13 years, so we've planted a lot of it. And I'll just take chunks of it. I'll just dig a chunk out with the shovel when it gets too big and move it somewhere else, and let it do its thing. It's really easy to propagate. It's a great herb for beginners. Anybody that's new to gardening in any way, I always recommend herbs. Number one, herbs are so easy to grow. They're so very forgiving. And if you're really new to growing, members of the mint family are the greatest place to start because it's almost fail safe, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. It is a gift.
Yeah, right.
Some
That's a
people
good way
call
to
it a
look
curse
at it.
sometimes, but if we look at it as a gift, it is a gift.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, how about for fall? You have a favorite for fall?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna say sunflowers for fall.
Yeah? Okay, talk to me about sunflowers
Yeah,
medicinally, 'cause edible wise, I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with using sunflowers medicinally, so I'm excited.
get ready because
Okay.
every part of this plant is fantastic. So we can harvest the roots of our sunflower plants and they can be infused in oil or simply just boiled into water and made into a tea for topical pain relief. It is an incredibly
Yeah?
potent analgesic. Yeah. Really, really good stuff. And we find for me, I guess in the fall, we're hauling a lot of pumpkins and stuff. I got sore muscles, so the roots of the sunflower are there for me when I need them. We could gather the petals from the flowers, and they are astringent and they're antibacterial and antimicrobial. So they make a fantastic face wash, and they can be utilized for acne and all sorts of different skin conditions of that nature. The seeds of the plant can be turned into a tea, make sunflower seed tea, excellent for digestive complaints, stomach upset, and indigestion.
Really?
Yeah, isn't
Look
that
at
awesome?
that. That is
Wow.
awesome. That's a lot. That's a lot of different things from one plant.
It's amazing. And of course, like we talked about, the whole sunflower plant is edible as well, right? Every
Yeah.
part of the plant is going to be a food source. So that's a thing we really try to explore in the book as well, was how herbs do both things. Most of our plants are going to be medicinal and edible, right? So we talk about for every plant, how to use it in the apothecary, how to use it in the kitchen, how to grow and gather it, whatever it might be. But I really wanted people to maybe see plants from a different point of view and take, say, a sunflower, one that we know very well as an edible plant, and see all of these other things that it offers us as well once we take the time to learn about it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, is that all pretty much all varieties of sunflower, just the big giant ones? Like, how's that work?
Every variety of sunflower is useful for those things. What you will find is that the variance here is going to be in the quantity of those materials that you can get, right? The smaller sunflowers, you get less stuff. Bigger sunflowers will give you more. But aside from that, absolutely, all of the different sunflower varieties can be interchanged.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Mhm.
So, going through our seasons, we've got winter left.
Yeah, winter was a fun one to work on because I really wanted to explore plants that are already in your home, right? So we did a lot of that. Like, so some folks are lucky enough to continue to garden in the winter. Lucky them. Here in Michigan, not so much. We do bring a lot of plants indoors. So we do have like an indoor herb garden that we grow for sure. So we still have fresh herbs available to us, but there's so many awesome plants that you have access to in the winter that are already in your home. So things like cinnamon or green tea, those types of things. I'm hard pressed on which one to pick here. I have a couple that I'd like to talk about, but if I had to pick one, I think I would say garlic.
Mm.
Garlic. I love it so much. We grow a lot of garlic here at Small House, and one of the things that's cool about it is that you plant your garlic in the fall. So
Yeah.
when the gardening season's almost over with, you've got something that you can still go plant. And that's fun, right? So the garden isn't quite over just yet. And then my garlic is already up and at 'em. It's looking gorgeous now in the spring. It's one of the first plants that come up for us in the garden. So that's kind of fun from a gardening point of view. And we're all familiar with the many, many culinary applications of garlic, right? My
Yeah.
advice to everyone is anytime you see a garlic recipe that calls for 1 or 2 cloves of garlic, double it, use more. Always use more garlic, right? Every day, every way, using more garlic. But it's also incredibly medicinal, right? So there's a compound in garlic. It's a sulfur-based compound. It's called allicin. And the allicin actually starts to form once we cut the garlic. Once we bust the cellular wall, the chemical reaction that the plant has to that is creating this allicin compound, which is really the most medicinal part of the plant. So chopping it up, eating it raw is one of the healthiest ways to consume it. But garlic is also high in zinc, water soluble zinc. So, what I love to recommend to folks during cold and flu is garlic tea. I mean, some people will look at me funny when I say drink garlic tea, but I'm telling you, if you're new to garlic tea, put a little honey in it. You'll get used to it though, and maybe some pine needle, a little pine needle in
Ooh,
there for the vitamin C. But you feel something coming on, a little bit of garlic tea, you drink it, you go to bed, you wake up, $1,000,000 every time. It's such an amazing herb. So again, if I could only grow one herb, maybe it would be garlic. I think, it's hard to pick that. They're also beneficial, but garlic is a plant that we love. It goes way back for us. We've grown garlic for many years here on the farm, and it's one that you save and select and that sort of thing. So genetically speaking, it's clones of each other, right? So we've been growing the same garlic for 15 years now, and that's kind of
yeah.
cool too.
Okay. So, what's your variety?
It doesn't really have a name.
No. Okay.
So when we first came out to Small House Farm, We call it Morningstar. When we first started out here at Small House Farm, I did a lot of work off the farm, working at other people's places. And I worked for a couple of seasons at a farm a couple towns over from here. And I did a bunch of great stuff there. We had a big mushroom CSA, so we inoculated mushrooms. That's where I learned how to grow mushrooms. And
Yeah.
he grew a big garlic patch. And he told me a story about when he was a kid, when he was young, and he learned how to become a farmer. He interned at a farm. And when he graduated from farm school, they gave him some garlic as a gift, and that was the garlic that he grew. And then when I was done working on his farm, he
Ooh.
gave me that garlic as a gift. So I've still got that variety, and it was called Morningstar Farm where he worked. So that's just what we call the variety. But um, uh,
Oh, so it's hard neck or soft neck?
it's a hard neck. It's a hard
Okay.
neck variety. Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, we
Awesome.
grow a lot of it. You can never grow enough garlic for sure.
I agree, especially because when you're growing for obviously your own uses, but then your seed too, that you need mass amounts, right?
Mass
Yeah.
amounts, and in 2020, I found myself consuming significantly more garlic than I'd ever had before, and it kinda threw off my ratios of what I'm eating and what I'm planting, and, we're still kinda recovering from that. It's I wanna eat all of the garlic, but, you gotta set some aside, and, it's all about self-control, I guess, so I'm still learning that lesson sometimes.
Amen. Same here. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the seasonality part again. So how does the potency or properties of an herb change throughout the year?
Sure. Well, what we're going to find is first, it's dependent on part of the plant, what part of the plant we want to work with, right? So, if we're harvesting roots, of course, we want to harvest when the plants are dormant. So, early in the winter, all the way through once the snow melts, late winter, early spring, while the plants are still dormant, most of their energy is still down in the root system. So, that's the best time to harvest the roots, the medicine be the most potent, right? And then as soon as life comes to be to the plant and the foliage starts to grow, any point from there into flowering is a great time to harvest the leaves and then eventually the flowers. Of course, you harvest flowers when they're flowering. But after the flowering stage, we're going to find with many, many plants is the chemical composition of the plant is going to change. It's typically a defense mechanism that these plants are going to have to protect the plants so we don't eat the plants and they have time to make their seeds, right? So often you'll see like a common example would be like lettuce, basil, those types of plants, they go bitter. They get very
Bitter.
bitter in the leaf,
Yeah.
right? Is to stop us from eating the plants. So that's a signal that the chemical composition of the plant has changed and those leaves aren't going to be as medicinal for us anymore. So we want to harvest them before peak flowering happens. In some places, it's very, very important. So let's go back to nettles that we talked about. When nettles plants flowers, they change not just to become bitter, but they form these crystalline structures inside of the leaves that actually can be very damaging to our livers to consume them. So you should never eat a nettles plant once it's flowered.
Once it's flowered.
You, yeah, you could still use it topically, but as far as ingesting, it's not necessarily safe to do. So, I mean, that's a really simple rule. You want to harvest leaves all the way up until flowering, harvest those flowers, and then stop and let those plants make the seeds. And many of our herbs are going to produce seeds that are also medicinal. We talked about the sunflower seeds, parsley seeds, fennel seeds, etc. Those are all medicinal as well. We just have to give them time to develop, and then we'll harvest those in the fall. The seed is such a magical thing because it's like at the cusp, the balancing point between life and death is inside of this little seed. And I feel that part of understanding herbs through this seasonal lens is understanding the concept of life and death, right? That we all will eventually find our winter in our own lives, right? And when we take the time to follow these plants from a seed all the way to that seed again, then we truly understand the nature of the plant. We understand the nature of the people, the nature of the earth, right? So again, like I said at the beginning, we become better medicine makers, we become better gardeners, we become better people, right?
Yeah. 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 Seed saving in it. I mean, I know this is not a seed saving episode, but seed saving is really an incredible thing with gardening that I hope more and more people start to experience and dive into. And it's funny from more the poetic nature of talking about seeds is I still have this very vivid memory. We have seed saved beans. So my grandparents migrated from Appalachia in the 1930s out here, and they brought with them their strain of pole beans, and then a strain of shelled beans. And so that's all I've ever grown, and it's just been passed down in our family for many, many generations. So, anyways, I had finally gotten to shelling out the bean pods, like they'd been dried, and I just stuffed them in a bucket till I had time to get to them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'd shell them all out, and most of them, made it, but there was a couple of them that, ended up flying as they do as you're shattering these really, dry pods. And I remember I was kind of cleaning up and I was bending down, and way far underneath the table, like I could barely reach, it was underneath the table, was just one little bean seed. And I'm like, oh, it's just one little bean seed. And then God was like, yeah, that's one little bean seed to you, but imagine when that seed is planted, how many plants will that actually eventually become? And it was one of those moments where, like, it, obviously it stuck with me. I mean, this was like 15 years ago, but it
Right.
was really, I was like, wow, like something that seems so insignificant is one seed that you'd be like, oh, it's just one seed, I'm going to toss it. But there's true huge implications to what that one seed can become. Anyways,
I have a friend, he's got a t-shirt, he wears it to seed swaps. Every time I see him, I think he's wearing the shirt, and it says, "How many tomatoes are in a seed?"
yeah.
Right? Endless generations of them. We can trace these seeds all the way back through all these places, all these stories, all these people, all inside of these little seeds, you know? So obviously in Herbs in Every Season, we don't delve too much into seed saving, most certainly, but we do talk about the concept of seeds a little bit, right? Because they are a part of the garden. I really tried to be as holistic with this book as possible. When Timber approached me about the book, they were just looking for like a medicinal herbal, write us a book about herbal medicine. And I was like, man, kind of already have done that, you know, the artisan herbalist. I was like, but we can do something here. I wanted to approach it through this seasonal lens because I thought that was a really, it's a thought provoking way to work with plants. I thought, but we also have to have these culinary things and these growing things. And for me, herbal medicine and herbs in my garden and herbs in my kitchen, they're not separate things. They're all the same thing. That's my life, right? That's life. So how can we have each of these things independently? It didn't make sense to me, right? All of those things exist cohesively at the same time. You know, we have herbs in the garden because they are our food and they are our medicine, and we have to save the seeds from them so that we can grow them. It's all the same topic, right? So I said, I'll write the book for you, but this is what I want to say. And they thankfully said, "Will you write it, and then we'll see what we think about it." And well, here we are today. Apparently, it worked out really nice. They very much enjoyed what I did, and I very much enjoyed what I did. And I'm so excited to be at this stage of the game now, where we're going to have a chance to share it with the world and see what everybody else thinks. Because I'm a little biased, but I think it's some of the best work I've done yet, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to get my hands on it. I actually have a question for you. If someone hypothetically did not dig up their valerian root in the fall or even in winter, and there's like an inch of growth that started, should they just wait until next fall?
You know what? So there'd be two answers. The hard, strict rule here would be like, oh, you better wait until it's perfect, you know? But the
Yeah.
realism here is no, go ahead and dig it up. You know what I
Okay,
mean? Even if
sweet.
it's just starting to get going, it's still
Yeah.
got a lot of goodness in those roots.
Okay.
Get them, go dig
All
them,
right.
you know?
Okay. After this
That's
call,
the
give me
beauty
the
of it.
shovel.
Get right on it. Yeah. That's the beauty of working with plants and gardening and all that sort of thing is like there's that room for experimentation. There's that room for error. There's that room for that personal touch to things, you know. We're all kind of doing our own thing out there. And then I think that's part of the what makes it so special is each person's garden, each person's herbal work, whatever it might be, is a reflection of who they are, right? It's that relationship that they have with the plants, and you can see it in everything that they do.
Okay, sweet. I'm very happy that was your answer. Um, so are there some key differences in how we should harvest or use the herbs in different seasons beyond what we were just kind of talking about as the parts of the plant you would be using?
Oh, this is a fun question. So I'm going to recommend most often than not using herbs when they are dry, right? So we're going to want to, even though we're harvesting the fresh herbs,
Yeah.
drying them is going to make them more potent. But
Okay.
that's not always the case. Now, if we are working with flowers in particular, I love to use the flowers fresh. Flowers are very delicate, especially in culinary applications. You're going to lose a lot of the flavor of the herb, sometimes the flower. They're just very delicate. So if we can utilize those fresh, I enjoy that. That's what I would recommend when possible. You can certainly use fresh leaves, but in many cases, for a medicinal application, you need more plant material. You need 2 to 3 times more plant material when you're working with fresh plant than you do dry, because simply the water content. When the herbs are dry, the water's evaporated, the essential oils, the volatile oils and chemical compounds are more concentrated in the plant, so they're more potent. Roots, on the other hand, always use dried. I always dry my roots. You're going to wash them, get all the dirt off of them, chop them up, dry them out. You can dehydrate them, put them in like a food dehydrator if you want. That's going to work just fine. Things that are really fleshy like that, like a root system, a dehydrator is really a nice option. Just using them out on screens or sometime isn't going to be as effective enough to dry them quickly, and they could go bad. So using a food dehydrator for that's really nice. Or your oven. Of course, like on a low setting, you can dry things in your oven. And a lot of roots like chicory root, dandelion root again, I really kind of like to roast them a little bit because it brings out an interesting nuance of flavor, that kind of smoky roasted root flavor. Really, really nice. We did some different chicory and dandelion root brew, some kind of like a chai tea. We did a chai variation out of the roots, which was really, really nice. But roasting them brings that flavor out.
Yeah. Yeah. Roasting does lots of things to roots. I mean, think about roasted carrots versus boiled. I mean, yeah.
Exactly. Great example. Great
Right.
example.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally different flavor depth there. I love it. Okay. Is there any herb that you find particularly challenging to grow or work with?
Arnica.
Ooh, let's have this conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah?
arnica has always been a challenge for me in many forms throughout my life. So early in the days of Small House Farm, we used to do a lot of farmers markets. We'd set up at farmers markets and we'd sell herbal products and this and that, whatever. And we have these topical products that we
Mhm.
make that are good for sore muscles and such. And I would have every single market, there would be one person that would ask if I used arnica in my product. And I
Right.
did not. I do not. Arnica doesn't grow where I am at, and I don't have it. Arnica montana, the plant that we know, grows at a high altitude and flowers at this high altitude. So where I live in Michigan, I cannot get arnica to flower. It will not happen for me. So the only way I can utilize my products is if I purchased it. And
Okay.
especially early in small house, I was very adamant not doing it, right? Um, I am only going to use herbs that I can grow or gather. That's simple as that. I'm not going to buy anything. And it was a nice challenge. It really pushed me to learn about the plants in my bioregion, as difficult as it may have been sometimes. So no arnica, can't grow it, nothing like that. So I have since then tried numerous times to grow it because I would like to use it. It
Yeah.
is a powerful herb and it's fantastic for pain relief. The product that we sell is made with wintergreen is the main base. It's got cayenne peppers in it. We utilize nettles, a little witch hazel, and some sage. Those are the
Oh, nice.
botanicals. Yeah, it's really
Okay.
nice. And it's
Yeah.
infused in a blend of flax and hemp seed oil. So it's excellent for sore muscles. It's fantastic for inflammation. It's really nice. No arnica. I have tried arnica so many times and I can never get it to bloom here for me. That has been an endless challenge that drives me bonkers. But there's nothing wrong with going somewhere else and finding some. And in June, I happen to be heading to Idaho for a very fantastic event you might be familiar with. And I have heard that not far from where this event is at, arnica grows wild and that it will be in the season for blooms when I am there. So I am going to sneak away from the event for a short period of time and go see if I can find some. That's a
Yes,
big
and
adventure.
that would be the Modern Homesteading Conference that he's referring to. So if you have not gotten your tickets yet, highly recommend snagging your tickets and coming and seeing us. So I'm curious, what is your elevation then, Bevan? Where you're at?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head what that is, but I'm closer to sea level. We're down low.
Okay, because
That's a good. I don't know that actually.
yeah, no, I'm curious because we're not high elevation where we live, even though we're really in the mountains. That's kind of a funny, but we're about 550 feet above sea level, which
Okay.
isn't really super high elevation. But I grew arnica last year, and I did get a couple of blossoms per plant. Now, of course, they were in the, they were little tiny, small infancy ones. But apparently, procrastination tends to be in my personality because I did not get my valerian root harvested in time, nor did I manage to get my arnica blossoms
Oh,
harvested. And so I went to source arnica blossoms for some salve making, to your point. Oh my good night. They were $64 an ounce. And I'm
uh,
like, we are going without right now.
oh yeah.
I am not spending that much. Because there's other plants that will work. But anyways, that's interesting. I too I did get it to blossom. I just did not realize how expensive those little blossoms were that I allowed to just wither on the plant.
Well, you won't make that mistake again, I'm sure.
No,
Um,
amen.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we actually I wrote about arnica in the book because I wanted to share that story with folks, and I wanted to help people see that sometimes it's okay, that you can't always grow everything and you can't always do everything, you know what I mean? Sometimes you do buy some herbs, and that's okay. It's perfectly okay. Now, if you have the opportunity to hunt them down and travel somewhere and try to find them in the wild, that's a part of that relationship that I'm trying to develop with that plant, you know? But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and that's going to be okay. I wanted to really let the reader feel comfortable, regardless of their experience or their knowledge, to feel comfortable trying to do something new, right? To not to be boxed in by our own fears and misconceptions about things, right? Just relax, let it unfold, and just have a good time out there. That's ultimately what we should be trying to do in the garden or anywhere in life, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Bevan, thank you so much. As always, I enjoy our talks. I always learn something new and just love your passion for it. It definitely comes through. So remind everybody the title of the new book and its official release date. And then we'll have links to it, of course, when the episode goes live.
It is called Herbs in Every Season. It's officially available everywhere books are sold on March 25th, 2025, and you can get autographed copies through us at smallhousefarm.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Melissa. This was awesome.
If you'd like to visit the blog post that we have that accompanies this episode with links to everything and more that we talked to, make sure that you go to melissaknorris.com /4. Can I do this with my hands? 463, just the number 463, because this is episode number 463. So again, that's melissaknorris.com /463. We'll have links to Bevon's book, all the things we talked about, additional articles and resources, as well as herbal remedy recipes on my website, melissaknorris.com. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed that episode. It was a fun one, as well as a lot of information packed in there. And I hope that I get to see you at the Modern Homesteading Conference. You can find out more about tickets at modernhomesteading.com. We would love to see you there. And until next week, blessings and mason jars for now, my friends.